All right, welcome back everyone to Foundations of Business Management 1104. Now that we have finished the first 5 chapters, we're now going to get back into reviewing the textbook and the chapters that are laid out for us. And so that means today, forms of business ownership. This is chapter 6. As always, I hope everyone has read the chapter beforehand as we walk through it today. So I have it, the exam grades have been released. You have access to those. If you have any questions with regards to the, to your answers or your exam score, feel free to schedule an appointment and I'll be glad to walk through with you your exam. We can review it online together to make sure, that you're able to reflect and learn from that particular exam. Normally during the spring and fall semesters, we have an entrepreneurship exercise that all the teams work in. A little difficult to do in a virtual standpoint. So you will have a discussion post within your teams. And I would like for the team members to, have a discussion. You don't necessarily have to have a meeting, but use the discussion board to listen and learn and to share insights and perspectives on that. I'll give you 3 or 4 days so that everyone replies and responds to that. Everyone should participate. Let me repeat that. Everyone should participate in the discussion post. Very, very important that you do that. Okay, let's jump into chapter 6. Before I get too far, the CAPSIM simulation, you should be getting registered for that. That will be posted later by June the 3rd, if not by June the 6th. Make sure you register, do your training, and be prepared for your semester-long project. Remember, you have to complete the training in order to get the grade. It's again an easy 100. It usually takes anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes to do the training. It's individual training, and that will then prepare you to be a very, very good team member once the team project kicks off later this summer. Learning objectives we're going to cover today, and first things first is there's really kind of a simple way at looking at starting a business. Entrepreneurs, even investors will start to look at these three key points, right? So one is, does the entrepreneur have technical skills in that business, right? So an entrepreneur would say, do you have technical skills in that business? Do you have management experience? And then do you have the financial capacity to get the startup funds required? So time, talent, and treasure. It's the 3 things that I talk about when it comes to entrepreneurship. And it's an important aspect to understand. So learned experiences, you can see there, whether that's technical skills or management skills, those are learned experiences, through organizations or, through, an academic journey, academic career, whatever that might be. Types of businesses, and the textbook kind of goes through the various ones. Important to look, kind of be reminded that sole proprietorships make up 72% of all businesses. And then the business revenues, should not be too surprising, comes from 82% of corporations. Sole proprietorship, there's some advantages. Obviously, the owner gets to keep all the profits. Complete control for the owner, arguably or relatively easy and inexpensive to form. Now, with that, there's some disadvantages. So there's usually, if you have one, you got to have the other, the pros and the cons. So the disadvantages is that there's unlimited liability for the owner. So if anything goes wrong, it stands on the shoulders of the owner. Complete responsibility for talent and financing. So when it's a sole proprietorship, that entrepreneur, the business owner, has to go out and find and recruit, interview, train, and hire all of that. Also has to, be responsible for financing, whether that's using their own funds, going through angel investors, or working with a bank. All of that is very, very important. And then the last one there is, if the business owner dies, then the business dissolves. It really just goes away. And that's tough for a lot of entrepreneurs to think about. In fact, those are some difficult questions or difficult discussions that many entrepreneurs have to have. And they don't, sometimes they will avoid those types of discussions because it's obviously a difficult conversation to have, but very, very important. A sole proprietorship is the easiest business structure. It typically just means a license or a permit, registering the business with the local government. So obviously it is the most popular. Freelancers, consultants, these are all different types of sole proprietors. They utilize this as independent and as independent contractors because it's ease and convenience. Okay, partnerships, a general partnership, 2 or more people. Ideally, the word partnership should be intuitive enough that it is more than one. It does account for about 10% of all businesses. Let's start to look at the advantages. Obviously, with there being more people, more than one, there's more research, more resources and talents because there's an increase in partners. And the business can continue even after the death of a partner. So there's that death discussion again. And so if the main partner was to pass, die, then the business could continue because there would be another person. Some disadvantages. Anytime we're dealing with people, human nature, there's going to be some disputes, right? And so those can start to happen. Unlimited liability again, and there is shared profits. Now, more than one person, you start to look at a pie, like a pie chart, and you start to divide that up. Obviously, you got to share the profits. A limited partnership gets into a little bit more specifics. That's when there's a single general partner. They're responsible for the liabilities, and they will also run the business. The other partners typically are there for their investment, and any losses would just be the amount that they have invested at that time. So limited partnership, you have a general partner, does the work. The rest of the partners are there for financial reasons, and any losses, again, not liability, but any losses would just be from the financial aspect. As I mentioned in my introduction a couple of weeks ago, I have an agency, a marketing agency here in Blacksburg. Started out as a partnership. As of December of this last year, it is back to a sole proprietorship. My original partner from day one now lives in Brooklyn, New York, and decided that he wanted to pursue that particular career. He didn't have enough time to be involved, and so he did resign and step away. So now it's a proprietorship. One of the things that, one of the first things that we had to do when we entered into this business and this partnership was meet with a lawyer. And the lawyer helped us set up a partnership agreement so that the disputes could be understood even beforehand. When something would come up, what would that rights, responsibilities, what would the scope look like? The roles and responsibilities as well within the organization was very, very important. Never forget too, when we met with the lawyer, local lawyer here, one of my good friends, Jeff Mitchell, and a couple of things that he asked that just surprised me. One was, what's your exit strategy? And of course, this is the second time I've started a business, and to hear what your exit strategy is, I'm thinking, we're just now entering into business. What do you mean I need to think about the exit strategy? I'm thinking about doing well and starting out and that sort of thing. But his point was well taken. And, was the plan to keep it forever? And if so, what would that look like for any of my survivors or any of my partners' survivors? Was the plan to build it up and have it placed for an acquisition or a strategic alliance? So important to think about, and it certainly gives an entrepreneur a point of reflection of what's next, or what does the future look like. The second thing that that was sort of a surprise that the lawyer asked me was, what are you going to do if you die? looked right at me, what happens if you die? And I thought, well, that's not really the conversation I was planning to have, right? But it was actually an excellent question because, did I plan for my family to take it over, my 3 sons, of which now that could be very complicated for my partner, Justin, because now instead of 2 partners, if there was a survivorship with 3, all of a sudden now there's 4 owners of the company. So very, very tough. The agreement could look at, for example, the amount of cash and other contributions made to each partner. So we had to make a list. What was each one of us bringing to the table? Cash, computers, whatever that looked like. The division of partnership, from an income or loss standpoint, whether that's 50-50, 30-70, what did that look like? Partner responsibility. So who does what, and it's sort of like, and we all just sort of did what we had to do, but we actually had to put it on paper. And certainly had the chief executive. He was actually in the business more than me, so he played more of that managing partner role. But who's going to handle marketing? Who's responsible for the finances? What about operations, human resources? So you can't say, well, we'll just handle it when we handle it. No, there should really be a specific person, a specific partner that is assigned those tasks so that there's accountability and responsibility with that. Some others, condition for settling disputes, dissolving the partnership. All of this was very, very important. Corporation. So this is what many of us know and understand. So a corporation is, an entity that has shareholders who invest by buying shares of stock. Some disadvantages, we'll touch on that first before going to the obvious advantages. Some disadvantages is the agency problem. So the textbook gives you a very good definition of the agency problem. And the agency problem is when the board of directors or the managers have to make decisions of which is best for the organization, of which may not be best for their own personal situation. So for example, if there's an acquisition that's put on the table, a board of directors or managers in the organization may push back and say, I'm not so sure I like this. I personally will not benefit from it. And so that becomes difficult. They need to make the right decision for the overall best interest of the company. Double taxation. There are taxes on the top line revenue of an organization, and there's taxes for the employees and their payroll. So that's the reason for double taxation. And then it's kind of expensive. So incorporation expenses and regulations can be very, very heavy as well. Some advantages: limited liability. So now, instead of unlimited liability on the proprietorship, now all of a sudden there's limited liability, easier access to financing, and then certainly unlimited life for the corporation. So if there is a death of the CEO, COO, the founder, there's plenty of resources within that organization to keep the succession and the overall operation of the company going. Look at Steve Jobs and Apple, right, is what's happening there. You can see here on the footnote, limited liability. Shareholders can be exposed, but they're only responsible for the amount that they have personally invested in the company. So it's not like if the company goes bankrupt, they're going to start knocking on everyone's, all the shareholders' doors asking for monies from that. That's not how it works, okay? You can see here some of the largest publicly held companies: Apple, AT&T, Bank of America, Walmart. You then look at Warren Buffett and his investments, which, as it turns out, are some of the larger companies: Apple, Wells Fargo, Walmart. You see there. Some privately held corporations. So privately held, they do not have to reveal their amounts of revenue, right? So they're privately held. There's no, they're not on the stock exchange. Typically family-owned companies, with regards to that. You can see there Deloitte and PwC, 2 companies that recruit here at Virginia Tech and within Pamplin. Some other types of organizations and business structures, an LLC, which is a limited liability company. So this gives you the chance to have both the partnership, but the liability protection of a corporation. So a nice setup there. A cooperative is a business that's owned and brings together multiple companies together, usually small companies, individual firms who can sort of pool their resources and use it to market products, purchase supplies, or provide services for its members. Farmers, lots of agriculture groups and farmers participates in cooperatives. Virginia Tech has one of the largest, the Cooperative Extension Agency, which helps Virginia ag business owners, farmers, to be able to do just that, market products and purchase supplies. Not for profit, again, great tax treatments. And then the goal here is the organizations formed for a public mission, a public passion, a public purpose rather than financial gain. Textbook gave you a good example of Ben and Jerry's. I'm not going to go through this like I normally do. I think the key point here is look at the life savings. So on the far left-hand side there, $8,000 of life savings, $4,000 worth of borrowed funds, and they established a partnership. These were two college friends, university friends, and then they had a growth. So they went from a partnership then to a stock option, and they needed $2 million, and so they started to sell shares of stock. Now, what's interesting, it's kind of typical, happens a lot. This is a great example of how family and friends, or in this case, residents, love the product, right? I mean, there were people standing in line for a long, long time to get the Ben & Jerry's ice cream at the local ice cream shop. But when it came time to buy stock in the organization, only 1 out of 100 people in Vermont bought stock. Same thing, similar type of thing happens with friends and family. That trying to raise that treasure standpoint can be very, very difficult for organizations to do that. Again, just to recap, 72% of all businesses are sole proprietorships, 82% have the revenues. Talking about mergers and acquisitions. So a merger is when two companies come together, but they form one company. An acquisition is the purchase of one company of another, and it's integrated into that to that one particular company that made the acquisition, right? So mergers, two companies, but they form one new company. An acquisition is when one purchased the other and they integrate it into their existing organizations. Now, why do companies do mergers and acquisitions, right? Partly to gain complementary products, attain new markets, new distribution channels. Many times they're able to drive lower cost, so they can realize some synergies along the way. Now, this is also a chance to talk about hostile takeovers. And so a hostile takeover occurs when a company is purchased, even though the board of directors did not want to be acquired. So there's a process here. Typically, there's some phone calls and some emails and whatever. There's some meetings that says, we would like to purchase your company. We'd like to acquire your company. And for whatever reason, board of directors, the company's management will push back and say, thanks, but no thanks. Eventually, the hostile takeover part goes, then the acquiring company, the company that would like to make the acquisition, will then go public. And they'll go to the press and say, here's what we want to do. Hey, shareholders, we'll give you 10%, 25%, whatever the number is above and beyond what you were asking for. If you look at most recently, Elon Musk and Twitter, for a few days there, it looked like it was going to be a hostile takeover. Then there was some meetings. It's gone back and forth. Kind of been a little bit of drama, if you will, there. Still not sure what exactly is going to happen, but kind of a good example of where that looks like. All right, franchises, definitely some advantages when it comes to franchises, personal ownership, typically a lower failure rate because there is assistance, financial assistance, marketing and management assistance. So, the franchisor does not want the franchisee to fail, so they'll jump in and work with them and try to help them. There's some disadvantages: large startup costs, very, very expensive startup cost, shared profits. So the owner, here in this case, the entrepreneur or the franchisee, will have to then pay, monies back to the franchise. Management regulations, there's restrictions on selling the franchise. And so it can be very, very tough, but certainly a type of ownership, if you will, as we move into Chapter 7 in entrepreneurship, certainly a chance to own a business through a franchise. Many times in class, families, so maybe your family or friends have a franchise that you know of as well. That's going to wrap up Chapter 6. As always, if you have questions, feel free to reach out, schedule time with me. I'll be glad to meet and discuss anything that you might have. With regards to that, take care of yourself. I appreciate you watching and listening and learning this summer. We'll talk to you soon.